COVID-19 funds have been expended by government. But the report nonetheless reveals jaw-dropping details of how various officials and assigns of this government misapplied, misused, and in some cases, willfully looted the unprecedented resource envelope that accrued to the NPP Akufo-Addo Bawumia government for the management of the COVID-19 pandemic. The Auditor General's report reveals that by the kind courtesy of COVID-19, Ghana benefited immensely from unprecedented inflow of funds from various sources such as the World Bank, the IMF, the African Development Bank, the European Union, the Contingency Fund, Bank of Ghana, among others. These funds, the audit report estimates to amount to a total of 21,844,189,000 Ghana cedis. That is what, according to the Auditor General, came into this country as a result of COVID-19. And so this is an extract from the audit report. You can see the table there, total amount mobilized. And if you add all the funds mobilized, you get a total of 21.8 billion Ghana cedis. We must emphasize here that this amount of 21.8 billion excludes other COVID-related funds, such as the $1 billion facility from IMF, being Ghana's share of the IMF special drawing rights to boost COVID, to boost our post-COVID economic recovery as a country. The Auditor General's estimates also excludes the over 62 million that accrued to the COVID-19 Trust Fund, which was established by an act of parliament to help mobilize funds to complement government's fight against COVID-19. So the 21.8 billion Ghana cedis we are talking about being the total amount of money mobilized by this government to fight COVID between March 2020 and June 2022 is not all there is. As you can see on the screen, you realize that at number 3, the Auditor General only reported 5.5 billion, a little over 5.5 billion as inflows from the IMF. That was the first $1 billion we secured from the IMF under the Rapid Credit Facility. And if you can move to the next publication, you will see that IMF Executive Board approves $1 billion disbursement to Ghana to address the COVID-19 pandemic. This was in April 2020, just after we recorded our first cases of COVID-19. And you can go to the IMF website to read that. So go back. This is the $1 billion the Auditor General reported. But after this $1 billion, which came into the country in April 2020, we got another $1 billion to boost our COVID recovery program in 2021, which is not part of the 21.8 billion reported by the Auditor General. So if you can move to the next publication. Yes, which is also a publication on the Ministry of Finance's website. It says Ghana has received $1 billion allocation from the historic 650 billion IMF SDR allocation to boost global recovery. And this is dated August 27, 2021, more than 1 year after the first $1 billion came in. And so, go back to the table, the first table. You realize that clearly the Auditor General left this second $1 billion out of the total amount of money that has accrued to the Akufo-Addo Bawumia government to fight COVID-19. It cannot be found in that table. Again, you would recall that Parliament set up, by an act of Parliament, the COVID-19 Trust Fund and encourage Ghanaians, corporate Ghana, and other entities to donate into the fund to complement government's fight against COVID. According to the chairperson of the Board of Trustees, that fund has also accrued in excess of 62 million Ghana cedis. Now I'm talking about her ladyship, Justice Sophia Akufo. And if you can scroll up, this is a daily graphic publication or graphic online publication, in which the chairperson of the COVID-19 Trust Fund indicated that the National COVID-19 Trust Fund has, since its inception on March 27, 2020, accrued cash of 62.3 million Ghana cedis as of June of this year. And she was speaking in 2022. So don't be deceived. The 21.8 billion Ghana cedis is just a tip of the iceberg. And that is what we want the people of this country to understand. These notwithstanding, ladies and gentlemen, the Auditor General reports observes that out of the total amount of 21.8 billion, only 11.7 billion was spent on COVID-19, while the rest of the money, precisely 10 billion Ghana cedis, was spent on so-called, quote, budget support, unquote. This animal called budget support, as we would later realize, was the Akufo-Addo Bawumia government's euphemism for their reckless and wasteful election-driven expenses, which resulted in an unprecedented budget deficit of 15.7% in the year 2020. We shall now discuss 15 key highlights of the shocking revelations contained in the Auditor General's report on government's COVID-19 expenditure. Friends, you know that there are many damning revelations contained in the audit reports under review. But time and brevity will not allow us to discuss all those findings in detail. So we are limiting ourselves to 15 key highlights for purposes of today's encounter. I believe we will have another opportunity to go deeper and go into the other findings that time will not allow us to deal with today. So, number one is that the Auditor General's report details how the Ministry of Health paid a total of $120 million to UNICEF for the supply of COVID-19 vaccines, but only received vaccines valued at $38.3 million, with a whopping $81.8 million of this transaction unaccounted for. This, ladies and gentlemen, raises serious concerns given the history of the current Minister of Health, Kweku Agyeman, under whose watch Ghana entered into the dubious Sputnik V vaccine contract and paid a colossal amount of money for vaccines which were never supplied to us as a country. It will be recalled how the government of Ghana, led by Kweku Agyeman, the Minister of Health, chose to pay $19 per dosage of Sputnik V vaccine through a phony middleman called Sheikh Ahmed Damouk Al Maktoum of the United Arab Emirates, when Ghana could have easily procured these vaccines at $10 per dose or less. Fellow countrymen and women, we in the NDC are very concerned that despite the dire economic crisis confronting the nation, the Akufo-Addo Bawumia government has neglected and or failed to retrieve the outstanding amount of $81.8 million, which could have been channeled into other developmental ventures to ameliorate the plight of suffering Ghanaians. The second finding we would like to discuss this afternoon is the fact that the Auditor General's report reviews how the Ministry of Health recklessly paid an amount of 10.3 million Ghana cedis as premium for special life insurance cover for 10,000 frontline health workers without any life insurance policy document and a beneficiary list. We find it intriguing, and should I say disgusting, how such a huge life insurance premium was arrived at without a beneficiary list detailing the names of beneficiaries, their dates of birth, and other relevant information which should have formed the very basis for the computation of that premium. This reckless misuse of COVID-19 funds by the Akufo-Addo Bawumia government does not come to us as a surprise. Why? Because we know that 30% of that booty went to an insurance company called Enterprise Insurance, a company that is closely related to the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta. It is a known fact within insurance circles that Enterprise Insurance, on whose board the wife of the Finance Minister, Angela Ofori-Atta, currently sits, today enjoys unfettered control over government's insurances, as typified by this questionable arrangement. Thirdly, friends from the media, the Auditor General's report avers that a contractor who has been awarded a contract at Irregular in the Northeast region, the Vice President, the appearance fee man's backyard, for the building of a holding, treatment and isolation center worth 15 million Ghana cedis, abandoned the project after receiving advance payment amounting to 4.5 million Ghana cedis. That is equivalent to 45 billion old Ghana cedis. They paid the money to him and he abandoned the site, according to the Auditor General. It is sad to note, friends from the media, that this colossal amount was paid to the contractor without him submitting any performance bond or any form of guarantee as best practice demands. This is a clear case of financial loss to the Ghanaian taxpayer and must not go unpunished. Number 4, the Auditor General's report also details how the government of Ghana, through the Ministry of Health, paid an amount of 607,419 dollars in the year 2022 for the supply of 26 Toyota Hayes Deluxe ambulances, valued at a total cost of $4 million. According to the Auditor General, the delivery date of the said ambulances was 15th January 2022. However, 1 year down the line, these ambulances are yet to be delivered. The irony here, ladies and gentlemen, is that the man at the center of this scandal, Health Minister Kwaku Agyeman, is currently in court as the principal witness in the case brought against the former Deputy Minister of Finance, Honorable Ato Forsen. The crux of the case against Honorable Ato Forsen is that he was allegedly involved in the issuance of letters of credit for the supply of some ambulances in the past, which ambulances were actually supplied and delivered, only to be abandoned by the Akufo-Addo Bawumia government. In the instant case involving Kwaku Agyeman, it remains to be seen whether the said 26 ambulances will arrive in Ghana at all. The future, they say, is pregnant. Still on various losses occasioned the Ghanaian taxpayer, the Auditor General's report uncovers how medical equipment valued at $110,088 and 27,895 cedis were issued to a private hospital in Medina, which did not serve as a COVID-19 isolation center and did not receive any COVID-19 patients. This is a clear case of misappropriation of COVID-19 resources and highlights how COVID-19 funds and resources, equipment, were shared wantonly like granules to cronies of the Akufo-Addo Bawumia government instead of being used to protect lives. In similar vein, the Auditor General's report reveals how medical equipment valued at $247,404, which were procured and received at the central medical stores and subsequently issued to some specific health facilities, did not reach the health facilities. In other words, the medical equipment vanished. Ladies and gentlemen, to all intents and purposes, this was a create, loot, and share arrangement in which officials of government, people we have elected to protect us, our duty bearers who we pay with our taxes, created schemes and procured medical equipment for personal gain under the guise of fighting COVID-19 instead of saving lives. Number 7, ladies and gentlemen, the free-for-all abuse of COVID-19 funds, as gleaned from the Auditor General's report, took the form of various shady schemes. One of such underhand dealings was the case of the over-invoicing by the National Food Buffer Stock Company. The Auditor General found, through his investigations, that between April 2020 and September 2020, the company received 3 payments totaling 42.2 million Ghana cedis. That is some 420 billion old Ghana cedis. Whereas way bills from various institutions which received these supplies amounted to only 40.8 million Ghana cedis, thereby leading to over-invoicing of 1.4 million Ghana cedis and over. Regrettably, instead of exercising its power to surcharge and disallow those responsible, the Auditor General feebly prefers to, as it were, recommend to the CEO of the National Food Buffer Stock Company to refund the excess money. This we find very objectionable. We hereby serve notice to the CEO of the Buffer Stock Company to, in his own interest, refund the said funds immediately or consider himself a candidate for prosecution when power changes hands. Friends from the media, one of the most bizarre findings of the Auditor General had to do with cash payments by the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection, totaling 11.9 million Ghana cedis, some 110 billion Ghana cedis, old Ghana cedis, to caterers who provided hot meals during the 3 weeks of partial lockdown, which monies were all retired with honor certificates. It is quite obvious, even to the uninitiated, that the resort to honor certificates, if you say honor certificates, or that, for example, you are buying food from a restaurant. So, Hejia Bintu of Class Media goes to Papaya and say, I'm ordering 1,000 packs of fried rice. And when she goes to her superiors at the workplace, she doesn't show her superiors with any receipts from Papaya that shows that she actually bought 1,000 packs of fried rice and was supplied with 1,000 packs of fried rice and actually delivered the 1,000 packs of fried rice to the workers of CMG, but rather write something on a paper. That is what is called honor certificate. That, oh, indeed, 1,000 packs of fried rice were bought and supplied. That is all. No invoice, no receipts. For hot meals, which cost the ordinary Ghanaian a whopping 11.9 million Ghana cedis. And we are talking about just some 2 Jimmy rice with egg without meat, served to few people in Kumasi, Kaswa, and Accra during 3 weeks of partial lockdown. Ladies and gentlemen, it is quite obvious, even to the uninitiated, that the resort to honor certificates instead of hard evidence in the form of invoices and receipts to support these claims and payments was a well-calculated scheme to whitewash and cover up the inflated expenditure on hot meals by the Akufo-Addo Bawumia government, and has in fact deprived the nation of value for money in the said transactions. According to the Auditor General, his office could not authenticate the cash payments because they were supported with mere honor certificates and lacked internal checks, resulting in the possibility of payments being made to persons who may not have provided any service. And this is coming from the Auditor General, not Sami Jenfi or the NDC. But ladies and gentlemen, what is most shocking is a related finding by the Auditor General that there were no honor certificates prepared for payments totaling 5.6 million Ghana cedis out of the 7.9 million Ghana cedis paid to caterers at the headquarters of the Ministry of Gender, Children, and Social Protection. This is a clear case of broad daylight thievery, if not robbery, which must not go unpunished. So, in the case of the 11.9 million, at least they were charitable to Ghanaians to have produced honor certificates. But in the case of this 5.6 million, which is equivalent to some 56 billion old Ghana cedis, there were no receipts, no invoices, no honor certificates. So they just claimed that they spent 56 billion on hot meals with no evidence to substantiate that. So you ask yourself, if these monies belong to President Akufo-Addo or his wife, is this how he would have expended it? You were giving money to fight a pandemic which at the time was killing many, and in fact killed many. And this is how you chose to abuse these funds, only to turn around and blame the same pandemic for our economic woes. Judge for yourself if these people deserve to be at the helm of affairs of our country. Friends from the media, it has also emerged that at the height of the pandemic, when frontline health workers complained about the lack of adequate PPEs, with some even losing their lives, senior management and supporting staff of the Ministry of Information were busy paying themselves a total amount of 151,000 Ghana cedis as COVID-19 risk allowance without approval. One may ask, what risk did Kojo Oponkroma and these staff of the Ministry of Information face to warrant the sharing of such colossal amount of money among themselves as risk allowance? You here, media men, you attended many Meet the Press series organized by Kojo Oponkroma in the Ministry of Information. When you went there, were you tested for COVID? Or were you treated for COVID? To have warranted the payment of COVID risk allowances to Kojo Oponkroma and his staff. What is even more bizarre is the finding of the Auditor General that allowances totaling 811,800 Ghana cedis were paid. That is some 8.1 billion OCDs were paid to staff of the Information Ministry without adequate supporting documents. The Auditor General noted that apart from expenditure memos and sign sheets, there were no activity or program reports to support and authenticate these allowances. It goes without saying that the Ministry of Information and its staff must immediately refund these unjustifiable payments to the state or be held to account. And I don't know whether Kojo Oponkroma is still in Ghana. I've been checking his Twitter page and his social media handles to see what he has to say about this damning revelation. But I am yet to see any response from him. He doesn't deserve to be in the position he currently finds himself in if these findings of the Auditor General are true. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, the Auditor General also found that COVID-19 related payments were made to various service providers, totaling 543 million Ghana cedis. That is some 5 trillion old Ghana cedis, outside of the Ghana Integrated Financial Management Information System, GIFMIS, in clear violation of Regulation 61 of the Public Financial Management Regulations 2019, LI 2378. Clearly, these illegal payments were deliberately made by officers of the Finance Ministry in order to obviate the strict rigors and scrutiny of the GIFMIS system. There is no doubt about the fact that this illegal act of the Akufo-Addo Bawumia government has deprived the state of value for money as far as the said payments are concerned. Number 11. Quite strangely, ladies and gentlemen, the Auditor General also found that contrary to Regulation 78 of the Public Financial Management Act, the Ministry of Local Government made payments from COVID-19 funds totaling 285,135 cedis on 10 transactions not related to COVID-19 activities at all. Again, number 12, the Auditor General found that between April 2020 and November 2020, the Ministry of Health made 23 payments totaling 4.5 million Ghana cedis to various suppliers for the supply of food items to the Pentecost Center and the Pantai Isolation Centers to cater for COVID-19 patients. Further scrutiny by the Auditor General disclosed that out of the total payments made, 3.7 million Ghana cedis, equivalent to some 37 billion old Ghana cedis, were fully acquitted and substantiated, leaving a difference of 765,459 cedis unaccounted for. Friends from the media, the Auditor General further noted that a company known as Modern Security Printers was awarded a contract to print 929,550 pieces of educational posters at a cost of 4.3 million Ghana cedis, and to conduct public education on COVID-19 safety protocols for students for an amount of approximately 1.4 million Ghana cedis. Shockingly, the Auditor General did not find any report or evidence that supports the execution of the so-called public education. Yet, these monies have not been retrieved for the people of this country. This unaccounted payment is a clear case of financial loss, a clear case of stealing from the people of this country, which must be retrieved without delay. Additionally, the Auditor General found that contrary to the express provisions of the Public Procurement Law, the Ministry of Health, without approval of the Central Tender Review Committee, increased the cost of 5 contracts with total contract sum of 24.2 million Ghana cedis by 4 million Ghana cedis through variation orders. Similarly, the Auditor General established that the Ministry of Health entered into 4 contracts for the supply of PPEs at a cost of 9.2 million Ghana cedis. That is some 92 billion old Ghana cedis. Through single source procurement without the approval of the board of the Public Procurement Authority. Number 15, and lastly, the Auditor General, ladies and gentlemen, also noted that in line with update number 6 of the President's address to the nation of 9th April 2020, non-governmental organizations and individual private water sellers provided free water services to their clients and customers at various MMDAs. However, a review of COVID-19 free water bills at the Community Water and Sanitation Agency disclosed that there were no actual water bills generated and submitted to the agency by the NGO and private individual water providers to support their claims. The Auditor General could not verify the bill and validate the dubious payment of a whopping 37.6 million Ghana cedis. That is some 370 billion old cedis by the Ministry of Finance. So you heard government announce free water. Some NGOs and private water suppliers said they were going to supply communities without pipe-borne water or outside the reach of Ghana Water Company Limited with free water. These companies have water meters. And so it should have been very easy for the government of Ghana, if it cared about the people of this country, and if they were interested in the judicious utilization of public funds, it should have been very easy for them to say, bring your water bills so that we pay you. But that is not what Alhaji Bawumia and President Akufo-Addo did. They simply asked the water suppliers, what is the production capacity, the daily production capacity of your machine? How many people live in the community you supply them with water? They just multiplied it and paid without seeing any water bill. This can only happen in Akufo-Addo's Ghana. This cannot happen in any civilized jurisdiction, that the whole government will pay for water without seeing water bills, when the suppliers of that water have water meters. This, I don't know how to describe it, but this is a tragedy of monumental proportions. Distinguished friends from the media, while time will not permit us to discuss all the startling details contained in the report of the Auditor General, the above disclosures are quite scandalizing, to say the least. It is very clear that while COVID-19 may have been a national health disaster for Ghana, it was a bonanza and an avenue for officials of the Akufo-Addo Bawumia government and the New Patriotic Party to engage in the most obscene plundering of state resources never seen before in Ghana's history. You may recall that at the height of the pandemic in 2020, an audio recording of one Madam Felicia Tete, a former MCE and parliamentary candidate of the NPP in the Sagnerigu constituency in the northern region, emerged with grim details about how she, as a parliamentary candidate, was given a whopping 100,000 cedis, that is equivalent to 1 billion old Ghana cedis, of COVID funds, while another 200,000 Ghana cedis, 2 billion old cedis, was given to her constituency chairman. I'm sure most of you have heard this, but some may not have heard. And some of the people who watching us may not have heard. So for the avoidance of that, we will play to you just 1 minute of that audio so that it can go on public record. And those of you who have not heard will know how COVID-19 funds were distributed. We will play that after we take the questions. By simple extrapolation and arithmetics, and by parity of reasoning, about 82.5 million Ghana cedis of COVID-19 funds were doled out to New Patriotic Party parliamentary candidates and constituency chairmen in all 275 constituencies across the country. How could the new patriotic party and the Akufo-Addo Bawumia government be so wicked and heartless? Clearly,